at your question 3. So question 3 will only focus on one source or the other, so either source A or source B. Obviously read the question very carefully. In the mock that we focused on a couple of weeks ago, it was source A, and you only wanted to be looking at lines 16 to 26. The reason is it will direct you to this part because there is actually a lot of sort of language being used there, some very deliberate language choices being used. And if you look at the question, the focus here was on the power of the sea. So how was language used to describe the power of the sea? So one of the sort of clearest pitfalls was that students were not either looking at this section of the text, or they were not focusing on this part and they were just trying to pick out any language features they could find. And yes, there were a range of language features used in this text. There were things like similes in there and personification and, a whole range there. But you don't need to language feature spot. Okay, and that again can be an area where students stumble because what you've picked out may not actually relate to the focus of the question. So if you weren't focusing on this bit, the power of the sea, then what you were picking out and talking about isn't going to necessarily pick you up marks. So again, thinking about structuring your answer, a lot of students did incredibly well on this question. I think because this is a skill that we use in paper 1 as well. So when we focus on that language and we drill down into it. So a lot of people were remembering this sort of framework where we pick out language, link it back to the question. So in that first sentence starter, the writer uses language to show the power of the sea or to depict or describe the power of the sea. Anything like that would have sort of begun your paragraphs in a great way. And people were picking out phrases that were very, very language rich. But remember, it doesn't have to be phrases or whole sentences. You can just pick out and focus on individual words. As long as you take that next step, this last step here, where you talk about what it makes you think, what it makes you feel, and what it makes you imagine, or what it suggests to you. So what could you have talked about? There was all sorts in there. There was a metaphor, that wall of white water. But again, at the same time, that is alliteration because we have that w sound repeated. The simile, the light clothes in the washing machine, that's one that a lot of people picked out. But again, this one further down, the belly of the wave, that one was a great start. A lot of people started off really well with this one, but they didn't necessarily do the this makes me think, feel, imagine section of their paragraphs in enough detail to pick up as many marks as they potentially could have. Again, as I say, this is not the only things, that you could have talked about. There's a whole range of other words and sort of things that it would have made you, envisage when you were reading this. So the real sort of challenge was to push yourself through that barrier. As you can see on this mark scheme, we've got some attempt to comment on the effect of language, and then the next step up is that people are clearly explaining, the writer's choice. So the writer did all of these things on purpose. They did it very deliberately to describe and show you the power of the sea. And that's where we weren't pushing far enough. So if you tell me that he was spun around like clothes in a washing machine, that is the quote. Use your own words to explain that to me. Tell me, what is the effect of that? What did that make you feel? What did that make you think of when you heard that? If you just tell me that, they were spun around like clothes in a washing machine, you're not in this sort of side